Thank you all for being here. It's great seeing a crowd this big. How many people are at a pro-life function for the first time? Raise your hands. A bunch of you. Thank you for being here. I am also very pleased to see so many politicians in the room. My wife's a politician, so I had to say that. No. And after their introduction, the devil's going to make me do it, but I have to say, my name is Anthony Levatino, and I'm running for the school board in Toltec, Arizona. Because school boards are important, and we've been forgetting them for too long. No more. The story I'm about to tell you is not an easy one to tell, and I promise you it's not an easy one to listen to. But I promise you that everything I'm telling you is firsthand and true. You are here for a purpose. I believe that. We are all here for a purpose. But for a little bit, I want you to imagine that you're an obstetrician gynecologist like me. And I want you to imagine that you are a pro-choice obstetrician gynecologist like I used to be. Your patient today is 17 years old. She's 20 weeks pregnant. Her uterus is all the way up to her umbilicus. If you could see her baby, and it's easy on an ultrasound, her baby would be the length of your hand from the tip of your middle finger to your wrist. That's head to rump, not counting the legs, a 20-week baby. She's been feeling her baby kick for the last 2 weeks, but now she's asleep on an operating room table, and you're there to help her with her problem. You walk into the operating room scrubbed and gowned, and on the right, there are some instruments. And the first thing you reach for is a suction catheter. I know this is a big room and it's hard to see, but this is a 14 French suction catheter. It's about 11 inches long. It's clear plastic. And picture yourself putting this through the cervix into the uterus and instruct your circulating nurse to turn on the suction machine. And what you'll see is pale yellow fluid running through the tubing into the machine. That was the amniotic fluid that was there to protect the baby. Now, if she were only 12 weeks pregnant or less, a 12-week baby is the width of your hand from head to rump. You could pretty much do the entire abortion with this one instrument. Babies this big do not fit through catheters this size. So you reach for your Sofer clamp. It's about 13 inches long. It's stainless steel. The business end is about 2.5 inches long and 1/2 inch wide, and there are rows of sharp teeth. This is a grasping instrument, and when it gets a hold of something, it does not let go. A second trimester D&E abortion, the way I used to do them, is a blind procedure. You don't see anything. You do everything by feel. Picture yourself putting this up through the cervix. Now, be very careful not to perforate the walls. They're thin and soft. It's easy to do. And grasp anything you can blindly and pull, and I mean hard. And out pops a leg about that big, which you put down on the table next to you. Reach in again, grasp and pull hard. Out comes an arm about the same length, which you put down on the table. And reach in with the same instrument again and again, and tear out the spine, the intestines, the heart, and lungs. Head on a baby that size is about the size of a plum. You can't see it, but you're pretty sure you've got it if you've got a hold of something and your fingers are spread as far as they will go. You know you did it right if you crush down on the instrument and white material runs out of the cervix. That was the baby's brains. Now you can pull out skull pieces. Sometimes a little face comes back and stares back at you. Congratulations. You just successfully performed a second trimester D&E abortion. You just affirmed her right to choose. You just made what in today's dollars is the equivalent of over $2,000 in 15 minutes. Now, I graduated from medical school in 1976, and if you asked me at the time how I felt about the abortion issue, I would not have hesitated for a second to tell you I was pro-choice. This was a decision between a woman and her doctor, just like you hear today, and nobody, including the baby's father, had anything to say about it. You know, a lot of people describe themselves as pro-life or pro-choice. For a lot of people, it doesn't directly affect their lives. It doesn't even affect how they vote. But when you're an obstetrician gynecologist and you say you're pro-choice, this isn't some vague political position. You have to decide whether you're going to actually do those operations. So right along with learning how to do hysterectomies and deliveries and all the things that obstetrician gynecologists do, I learned to do first and second trimester abortions. This was the late 70s. Technology was a little different. There weren't any medication or chemical abortions at the time. If our patients were 12 to 13 weeks pregnant or less, we'd bring them in for suction D&C abortions. And when it was my turn to do them, I would do 2, 3, 4 in the morning, never thought anything of it. If they were more than 13 weeks pregnant, we'd make them wait several weeks and we brought them back for saline abortions. Now, these aren't done anymore, but suffice it to say that these women had to go through labor, and it would take anywhere from 8 to 36 hours for them to deliver their usually dead children. But hey, I'm a doctor, and every doctor, abortionist or not, wants the same thing: happy, healthy patients. It was during my first year of training that I was working at night and went down to the cafeteria for a break, and an attractive young nurse came and sat down next to me that I'd never met before, and it was the lady that was to become my wife about a year later. Now, New York had legalized abortion 3 years before Roe versus Wade, and when she had been approached as a nursing and nurses training and asked if she would assist at abortion procedure, she said absolutely not. She was pro-life, she wanted no part of it. And as far as she was concerned, that was the end of it, because she was ultimately involved in renal transplants, one of the first nurses trained to do that. And that was the end of it for her until we met. Now, obviously, we started dating and found out pretty quickly we were on opposite sides of this issue. And very early on, we made one of the most fundamental and frankly stupid mistakes anyone can make in a relationship. Instead of discussing it and hashing it out and coming to some kind of resolution, we ignored it because it was easier. And that set up a pattern that lasted too long in our relationship. We got married, and like so many young couples, we wanted to have a family of our own. Found out pretty quickly we had an infertility problem. She was just not getting pregnant. I sent her to the best infertility specialist in town. Any woman who's been through an infertility workup knows that it is difficult, painful, embarrassing. And she would come home from those visits, lock herself in the bathroom and cry, because two ironies were not lost on her. One, here she is married to an OBGYN and she can't get pregnant. Two, here she is trying to get pregnant and her husband's killing babies and abortions. But as soon as that thought came in, she'd push it away. Her doctor told us there was one last procedure he could try. It would take about an hour and a half. But when he walked out of the operating room 4.5 hours later, he came up to me and said, "Look, I never tell anyone that they're not going to be able to have a child of their own, but don't count on it." We were devastated. We both came from large families, and we wanted a family of our own. After we got over that shock, we decided, okay, we'll adopt a baby. We'd be perfectly happy to adopt a baby and care for that child as our own. And anyone who's tried to adopt a baby knows how difficult that is. We went to religious agencies, we went to state agencies, we went to county agencies, we went anywhere we could think of. And the best we could do after months of effort was to get on a 5-year waiting list to get on the actual waiting list. It was during that time that I had my first doubts about abortion. It was strictly selfish. I'm not an idiot. I know why there are no babies to adopt. People like me doing abortions. And I remember doing those abortions and thinking during that time and thinking, gosh, I'm throwing these kids in the garbage. Wouldn't even one of these moms allow us to take her child home and care for her as our own? But of course, it doesn't work that way. After a lot of frustration with that, I came up with what my wife still credits. We will have been married 45 years this December. But I came up with what, thank you. I came up with what she still credits as the best idea I've ever come up with in our relationship, other than my asking her to marry me. And that was, this is ridiculous. We're getting nowhere with the normal channels. I know 50 obstetricians on a first-name basis. Let's advertise. Maybe we'll get lucky. Maybe some kid will fall through the cracks, and maybe we'll be able to get a baby through a private adoption, and that's what we did. Months after we started that process, in August of 1978, it was working. And in the early 80s, those of us in the abortion industry were looking for a better method of second trimester abortion, the later ones. The saline abortions we'd been doing up to that time were very difficult on patients, very difficult on staff, dangerous, expensive because of the prolonged hospital stays. We wanted a method of second trimester abortion that was like suction D&C. We wanted a method where the patient would go to sleep, and when she woke up, it would all be over. And that's when D&E abortions were being developed, the one I described. There are a lot of physicians in Albany who were doing abortions, but no one wanted to touch that procedure. And we saw an opportunity. So we trained ourselves to do these later abortions. And as a result, we were getting referrals from other physicians to do these abortions on their patients. Over the next 4 years, I did 1,200 abortions. Over 100 were the late-term abortions that I described. But hey, life's good. Finally making some money, we can afford a home, we can afford some furniture, the kids are growing, and everything was just lovely until June 23rd, 1984. June 23rd was a beautiful day in Albany. I was on call, but it wasn't very busy. It was a Saturday. I made rounds, took the kids to an amusement park that afternoon, had dinner with them, and the kids were playing in the backyard when we had friends come over for cake and coffee. And at 7:25 that night, we heard the screech of brakes out in front of our house. The kids had gone in the road. Heather had been hit by a car. She was exactly 2 months away from her 6th birthday. We ran out and did everything we could. I'm a doctor. I'm supposed to be able to save people's lives. My wife was an intensive care nurse at the time. This was our work. As I said, we did everything we could. It made absolutely no difference, and she died in our arms in the back of an ambulance that night. Now, if you have kids, you may think you have some idea of what that feels like. If you haven't been through this yourself, you haven't got a clue. I hope you never find out. But what do you do after a disaster? You bury your child, and you try to get back into your life. And I don't know how long it was after Heather's death, but I showed up at OR number 9 at Albany Medical Center just like I had over 100 times before for a second trimester D&E abortion. I wasn't thinking of this as anything special. It was routine, and I had other things on my mind. And I reached in with that sofa clamp, and I tore out an arm or a leg, and I got sick. Earlier, I talked about stacking up body parts on the side of the table. That's not to gross out the people that came to the dinner. When you do an abortion, you have to keep inventory. You have to make sure that you get 2 arms, 2 legs, and all the pieces. Because if you don't, your patient will come back infected, bleeding, or dead. So I finished that abortion. And I know that it sounds strange, but I promised you earlier that everything I'm telling you is firsthand and true. For the first time in my career, after all those years and all those abortions, I really looked at that pile of body parts on the side of the table. And I didn't see her wonderful right to choose. And I didn't see what a great doctor I was helping her with her problem. And I didn't even see the equivalent of over $2,000 I just made in 15 minutes. All I could see was somebody's son or daughter. And this suddenly was looking very different to me. It occurred to me in that moment that this patient had come to me, figuratively, never literally, and said, here's $2,000, kill my son or daughter. And I was the kind of person that would look her straight in the eye with no compunction at all, say, sure, I'll do that. Needless to say, we were in a crisis. We just lost our daughter. Now, I told you earlier that we had made a mistake by not hashing out the abortion issue. The problem with not talking about an important issue in your relationship is it gets too comfortable not talking about other important issues in your relationship. And we've been growing apart. And with Heather gone, everything burst wide open. I didn't just stop doing abortions. I knew why I felt bad. I'll get over this. I was dedicated. But my wife always knew when I had abortions scheduled the next day because I was an absolute bear to be around. I got into a blame game. I was hurting, but I got into a blame game. It was a girl's fault for getting pregnant. It was the nurse's fault for scheduling them. It was the hospital's fault for allowing them. It was everybody else's fault but mine. Isn't that always the way? And after a few months of that, unbeknownst to me, my wife had had it up to here, and unbeknownst to me, she had packed a bag and she was 5 minutes away from leaving with our son. Now, I'm full-blooded Sicilian, she's full-blooded Irish. So trust me, we could have really lively discussions at times. And she was not going to leave without having her say. So she broke our unspoken rule after all those years and blasted me with, you know what? It's not the girl's fault, and it's not the nurse's fault, and it's not the hospital's fault. It's your fault. You stupid idiot, if you're feeling so bad about this, why don't you just quit? That was the opening salvo in an hour-and-a-half discussion about abortion and a lot of other things that were going on. I'm happy to say that she didn't leave. I went to my partners the next day and told them I would no longer do any more second trimester D&E abortions. It was too difficult. I'd just do the little ones, the suction D&Cs that we did in the office. And for several more months, I soldiered on doing those. I told you I was dedicated. But a change had occurred that I couldn't ignore. You think of doctors as so smart. We're no different than anyone else. When you finally figure out here, not here, that killing a baby this big for money is wrong, it doesn't take you too long to realize it doesn't matter if the baby is this big or even this big. It's all the same. It is so easy for the other side to talk about abortion. It is so easy to talk about discarding someone else's life. Today you're an adult. Once you were a child, you didn't look anything like you look like now. Once you were a baby. Once you were literally 2 inches tall. But it was always you. And I'm ashamed to say it was that long, but in February of 1985, I went back to my partners a second time, and I told them I would no longer do any more abortions, and I never did after that. Stop doing abortions? Now you know why I quit. There was nothing noble about it. I hurt, I quit, that's it. Get involved in the pro-life movement? Not a chance. You see, everyone in the abortion industry knows that everyone who's pro-life is a kook. I know this because CNN tells me so, and they would never lie to me. There's more to the story that I don't have time to tell. But I do have enough to say that I want to say while I have a little more time left. On December 1st, I was in front of the Supreme Court with a group of almost 100 pro-life physicians to listen to the arguments in the Dobbs case. And we were as pleased as you when on June 24th, the court came through and overturned Roe versus Wade finally. We won, right? It's all over. Yeah, no. This is when the fight really begins. We're only 30 days away from an election. And I don't know about you, but every single election I hear how it's the most important election in my lifetime. And it's true, until the next one. But it is true, and it's important. The abortion issue and the overturning of Roe has really galvanized the other side. They are willing to fight for what they believe in. Are you willing to fight for what you believe in? It took 50 years and 60 million innocent kids torn apart in suction machines or ripped apart in D&Es or poisoned with chemicals with RU-46 to bring that decision down. If we don't fight, and I mean politically, and I'm sorry, I know there are people in this room think that's a dirty word. You better get used to it. We're going to lose those gains, and we're going to lose those gains quickly. So in Texas, Robert Francis O'Rourke wants to bring back abortion on demand. Now, I don't see the ads in Texas, but I don't even have to imagine because I'm seeing them in Arizona. See, we have the same deal in Arizona. We have no abortion in Arizona as of today, none. But all I see, thanks, but Arizonans like Texas have got to fight because all I'm seeing is heavily financed ads for the governor and for the Senate, tens of millions of dollars talking about how extreme the pro-life candidates are. And they keep telling me that 67% of people support Roe versus Wade. I'll bet 67% of people in this room don't even know what Roe versus Wade really said or what they're really saying when they say that. You heard. Now we've got, okay, Texas outlawed abortions. But the VA hospital is federal land. So we're going to turn the VA hospitals into abortion clinics. Oh boy, what a great deal. Just like we're going to turn the federal parks into abortion clinics. But don't worry, because as they say, quote, the only abortions they're going to do in the VA are the ones that are medically necessary and appropriate. What does that mean? The lawyers in the room know that every single word matters. What does Roe really say? In the first trimester, no one can prohibit an abortion. In the second trimester, from 13 to 27 weeks, the state could, if they wish, pass laws of public health type laws. Only doctors could do abortions, for instance, or you could mandate that they have to be done in hospitals, but you can't prohibit them. Once you get to 27 weeks, which was viability in 1973, no longer, then the state could prohibit abortions, if it wished, unless the woman's health was at issue. Now, every single word matters. So what should you ask? What does the word health mean? Roe didn't tell us. Everybody knows Roe v. Wade. Seriously, how many people know about Doe versus Bolton? A few hands. You should know about Doe. It was a companion abortion case passed the same day as Roe. And thank God, Doe defined health for us. Health includes a woman's physical health. Well, that's great. But how bad does her physical health have to be to justify a third trimester abortion? Doesn't say. I mean, what if she has cancer? What if she's going to die? What if she has a headache? It doesn't say. It includes her mental health. Okay. But how bad does her mental health have to be? What if she's schizophrenic or suicidal? What if she's depressed or worried about her finances? Doesn't say. It includes her economic health. Wait a minute. How rich do you have to be economically healthy? Doesn't say. And my absolutely favoritist, it includes her social health. What the heck does that mean? I'll give you an example from my own practice of what I believe was a legitimate abortion on the basis of social health. remember, and I wasn't running an abortion clinic. I didn't care if you had the abortion or you wanted to have the baby. I was going to make money either way. But a 17-year-old came in for her 5th abortion and made it very clear to me that she wanted an abortion specifically because she did not want to be pregnant for her senior prom. That's her social health. So when they sit there and they tell you, well, you know what? We're only going to do abortions that are medically necessary. Or, I'd be happy to support your pro-life legislation as long as it has a health exception. They've been playing that dodge for the last 50 years, and we've been buying it. When they say only medically necessary abortions to them, every abortion is medically necessary. Don't let this happen. Votes matter. And this is now, I'm not a Texas native, okay? I'm speaking from Arizona, and I am literally speaking for the rest of the country. If Texas goes down in terms of abortion, the whole country goes down. Know that. I am no Trump fan, and I'm not going to get into that. But if it weren't for Donald J. Trump, we would not have the Dobbs decision today, period. With respect to all the politicians in the room, I'm going to tell you a secret. I'm married to a politician. So I'm going to tell you a little secret. And you can't make blanket statements about all politicians. So I'm just going to say, I'm going to tell you something you may not realize. Most politicians really like their jobs. They want to keep them. Okay? And I have said this 1,000 times, and I will say it again. If every single pro-life person, if every single person who claimed to be pro-life in this country, if every single person sitting in a church that says it's pro-life voted pro-life, just one election, just one, give me one, pro-life politicians would appear like magic. Just once, you go to that person and say, you know what? I love your stance on immigration. I really love what you're doing with health care. I applaud what you're doing with whatever bill it is you like that they support. But, Mr. or Ms. Politician, and I don't care if they are running for President of the United States or for dog catcher, no pro-abortion politician gets our vote, ever. If we did that just once, we could have, and I mean us. Why is there abortion in this country? I blame us. I blame us. If we did that just once, it would end. So, vote. Get politically active. Get like-minded people to vote. And when it comes to pro-life matters, you've got Texas Alliance for Life fighting for you in this state. They are out educating. They are out lobbying. They are out promoting candidates. They are helping to do the difficult legwork in your state legislature that keeps Texas pro-life. But they can't do it without your help. They cannot do it without you. Their goal tonight is to raise $400,000. That is easy to do in a room this size. But when they come to you, be generous and support them. Now, I was having lunch with Joe Poyman this afternoon. He told me, you know, they need 2 new staff members. That's $60,000 apiece. I'm willing to bet good money that there are a couple of people in this room that could support at that level and bring those staff people to that organization. But when they come to you, be generous, because without you, they can't do their job in keeping Texas, and I mean it when I say, goes a long way toward keeping the United States of America abortion-free. Thank you all. I appreciate your attention. God bless you. Thank you. Thank you.